I just got through completing my fifth novel. This one is a romantic comedy called Spinsterella, and if I had to describe it in a Hollywood long line, I would call it Shrek meets Lydia Dietz from Beetlejuice. And the reason why I would call it that is because I'm mixing several unique characters together to form a very fun and delightful romantic comedy. Now, the Spinsterella concept comes out of my love for the goth subculture. I have always wanted to write a goth character since the 1990s, and I never really could find the right story to fit them in. I had tried to make several of my other characters into goth characters. I had originally planned for Colleen Anderson from the Thetas and the John Haynes story to be a goth character, but it just didn't come together. And I had originally planned for Marilyn Marie from All About Marilyn, book back here, in the final, All About Marilyn here, the screenplay, in the final act of her character transformation to become a goth character. But I just couldn't make it work into the story. It didn't flow organically, and I had to scuttle my ideas to bring this goth character into each of those stories. Now, why do I like goths? Because they remind me a lot, of African Americans. It's a very it's a subculture that's around throughout the world, and the reason they remind me of African Americans is because they live on the dark side of reality. You're a goth, you know. They may wear all black, and they may like stuff like horror or science fiction and fantasy, but they see things, from a very unique perspective, and I really like the perspective that they come from. I grew up back in the day when the goth culture was just coming up in the 80s, because goth culture did start in the 80s. It's an offshoot of punk culture, and punk culture was big in the early 80s and the mid 80s, and the goth culture, came up around that time, started at that time. A lot of people don't know that the goth culture and the punk culture, punk and goth is an offshoot of punk, and that Tim Burton was the guy who introduced me to these concepts in his movie Beetlejuice. I went Easter Sunday back in 1988 to see Beetlejuice, and from there on, I was pretty much fascinated. He put little elements of it in his other movies like Batman Returns, The Nightmare Before Christmas. You could see these little hints of it in there, and I always found it to be, an interesting culture, and a lot of the things that they put in their humor, I put in my own humor, and it was I always felt that the character would be a very great fit because I always put a lot of, irony and sarcasm and satire in my comedies, um, and I also put it in my fantasy stories as well. And I always thought that it would just be a good fit for me to write that type of character because I really liked this subculture, and I really liked a lot of what is a lot of it again relates to a lot. I see it as relates a lot to black people because, again, it's a very very broad subculture. There's a lot of different groups and a lot of different ways of the ways goths express themselves. I mean, it's not just some guy in all black. There's different varieties, different textures, different shades of it, and I always wanted to show how unique it is. And I did a lot of research to do this character. I mean, I've done like years and years and years of research. I always wanted to write this type of character, but I never, again, could make it fit. But I could finally make it fit in this Spinsterella story. And the story, again, the main character is a 40-year-old goth who is working at a corporation, and she has an interest in this mysterious, quiet man who stalks the halls of the company. He's a new hire, and she wants to find out what he's about. That's all I'm going to give you, regarding this romantic comedy. But it's very funny. I put a lot of fun jokes in there. Um, it's a fast read, and I think people are really going to enjoy it. And I really enjoyed writing this story because it really helped me, deal with a lot of the issues that I had in my life over the last 7 years. Because when I lost my job in 2008, it really it was a really painful time for me, and I'm trying to learn. I wrote this story so that people can understand, what it's like to come out of long-term unemployment. Because again, this hero, as I wrote it, has to deal with these issues of being long-term unemployed, and the issues of having to socially transition. Because when you're out of work for a long time, it's like you're an outcast. You don't really belong anywhere. You really don't fit. And this is again why I thought it would be a good fit with this goth heroine, and because a lot of people look at them as outsiders, but I see your goth as some of the nicest people. I've watched a lot of their videos. People like your Toxic Tears, Black Friday, um, Gothic Alice. I watched a lot of their videos. It seem like very, very nice people, very friendly people. And I've also looked at other people's blogs like Sophisticate Noir. They seem like very nice, friendly people. I don't know them personally, but this is what I get from their videos and what they have conveyed in their videos. And from what I've seen from other goths at Comic Con and other places, seem like very, very nice people. And I always wanted to tell a story about them. And I always wanted to show, how this subculture really is. A lot of people think, again, these people are weird and strange. I just see very nice people. When I see them, it's just like, I think about that TV show, The Munsters. Everybody thought these people were all weird and strange, but they were some of the nicest, friendliest people you could ever meet. And that's what I wanted to put in this novel, and that's what I wanted to convey in the Spinsterella novel. And it's about, two people from two different worlds coming together and, forming and trying to have a romance. And that's the story I really wanted to tell. And I got to talk about issues in my life and talk about being long-term unemployed and being out of place and, trying to transition back into a workplace after being out of it for so long. And that's something I really wanted to talk about because when you leave the workplace and you come back to it, it's a learning curve. It's a tough transition, and the reason why it's a tough transition is because you don't know who to trust, you don't know who to talk to, and oftentimes the world has pretty much changed around you. So when you enter this workplace, it's not the same as the workplace you came into. So you don't know what type of people, what the people are like, what the environment is like, and how you're going to survive in it. Because I remember when I left the workplace in 2002 and I came back in 2008, I had to deal with a lot of issues like being social anxiety and just social anxiety and a lot of shyness issues when it came down to social situations. And a lot of people think that you're being conceited or being aloof, but you're really dealing with your own anxieties as it relates to trying how you're going to make it in this place. And you don't know how long you're going to be here, because when you've lost jobs, and you've been out of work for, long periods of time, you don't know how long you're going to be there. So you really don't know if you really want to form relationships with people yet. You don't even know if you're going to be, how long you're going to be there. So you don't know if you're going to be comfortable with people. I mean, these are things that most people take for granted because they have been inside a, corporate business structure or corporate culture for a long time. So they take these concepts for granted, and they don't understand that, a person who's been out of work for a long time being socialized is very different from a guy who was, he lost a job and in 6 months he's back at another job because he hasn't been, he's not been out of the system for so long. Whereas a guy who's been out for a long period of time and then winds up out for another long period of time, it's a very, very jarring transition to go from, being on your own to then being in an environment with a bunch of people working from 9 to 5. And that's a big point that I really wanted to convey in this story, because I really wanted people to understand, the issue of being long-term unemployed. And I just found it to be interesting because I found that the only person who would probably understand that would be another outsider, like a goth or a other person who lives an alternative lifestyle. They would understand really, what it is to be outside of the system and understand that how tough it is to transition from, your standard 9 to 5 work environment into, I mean, not, well, I'm still getting backwards here, but they would understand how hard it is for a person who's been outside to transition to the inside. And that was one of the things that I really wanted to talk about in that story. in addition to the goth subculture, because again, I'm a fan of it. I really like the people. The way I've seen, from what I've seen, they seem like very nice people, very friendly people. And from my research and my outside observations, and I really wanted to tell that story, you know, for a couple of years now, and I've wanted to tell that story, and I did some research on it so I could make sure all my information was pretty much correct, and I think I got a lot of it right. I don't know if I got it accurate, but I think I got it pretty much accurate. Usually, when I'm doing research and people read the stories, people tell me that I like the Thetas. Um, 2, 3 years ago, I've had women tell me that they were surprised that a man wrote this story about women so well. I'm hoping that I can do the goth subculture the justice that it deserves. I know it's a very broad culture, again, like black culture, and there's many different stories from the experience. And, that's one of the great things about the goth subculture is that there are many different types of goths and many different ways of expressing it. And that's what I liked about it. And I'm hoping that I got it right. I'm hoping that I, presented it in a positive light, because that's one of the things I really wanted to do with this book, Spinsterella. I really wanted to present that subculture in a positive light, because I wanted people to see that these are great people, and that this is just the way they express themselves, and I really wanted to present that in the story, and I'm hoping that people will pick it up and give it a chance, because this is a different type of story, but it's one that I really believed in. I was really passionate about writing. Again, I was writing 3 chapters a day on this story because I was having so much fun writing it. I haven't had this much fun writing a story since I wrote the Cassandra Cookbook back in 2004, and that was a story I really enjoyed writing. And I really want people, when I publish this, to come and pick it up. The cover you see in the picture is not going to be final. I'm thinking about doing something different with it. That may be the cover, it may not be the cover. Right now, the book is in its first draft, and I'm doing edits as we speak. So I'm hoping to have this one out for Christmas of 2015. I am not making any guarantees, but I'm hoping to get this one out for Christmas of 2015. I'm urging everybody, to get themselves a copy of Spinsterella when it comes out, because it's a very, very fun romantic comedy. Again, I call it Shrek meets Lydia Deetz from Beetlejuice, and if Tim Burton made a romantic comedy, I believe this would be something like he would make. That's all I have to say for this video. You can find all of my other great books on Amazon, like The Temptation of John Haynes here, on Amazon.com. This one is on Kindle Unlimited, so if you have Amazon Prime, you can borrow it for free. I also have All About Marilyn here on Amazon on Kindle Unlimited, and you can borrow this for free if you have Amazon Prime. And I have a whole host of other great books on Amazon.com. Many of the ebooks only start at 99 cents, like the ISIS series, and many of the nonfiction. The other books are like the Thetas and The Temptation of John Haynes are $2.99. But again, if you have Amazon Prime, I have a whole library of books you can borrow for free. Spinsterella will be out possibly December 2015. We'll see what I can do. And I'm hoping to make this one of the best books I've ever made. So I'm hoping you go out and pick it up, because I think you'll enjoy it.